From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, episode number 437. Andrew with you once again. I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. My co-host is Derek. You know him in the forum as Deeper3, and he is Deeper384 on Twitter.
Happy to be here. Andrew, over the last few weeks, we've had quite a few people in the basketball gaming community interested in, retro or classic basketball video games and growing their collection, asking how they can get their hands on these games, etc. I think you would agree over the last few weeks, there's definitely been a lot of interest in that.
We've had a few questions, and it's great to see because we've had so much fun with those games. We are crazy collectors, so yeah, we'll do our part in helping other people become crazy collectors too.
100%, and that's why we're here. So we may need to add a segment to this show, maybe like D's Deals or something like that. I mean, we wouldn't do it every single week, but something where we go over some of the prices that I've found online. This week, I focused on Amazon. So what classic NBA 2K and NBA Live games could I find on Amazon? And what we're going to be discussing is PC versions. So we're looking at growing your retro PC basketball video game collection, but doing it at a cheap price. So I found a way for somebody to add 5 classic NBA 2K games, 5 classic NBA Live games for under $100. Actually, the total ends up being $82. Now, this is not factoring in shipping. This is just the base cost of these games. So at the $82 total for all 10 games. So I wanted to give a rundown of some deals that are on Amazon right now.
And these are all PC?
These are all PC. And so I'm rounding up these prices, and the condition of these games are either going to be used acceptable, used good, used like new, or new. So you'll have to go on Amazon and search those titles yourself to see which ones are for these prices. Most of the prices that I'm giving you are going to be used, and that is usually perfectly fine if you want to play these games and grow your collection that way. So NBA Live 99, Antoine Walker on the cover, $4. NBA Live 2000, one of the best NBA Live games ever made, $4. NBA Live 2003, $5. So that's the first game they had freestyle control. Jason Kidd on the cover, one of the best soundtracks in basketball video game history. NBA Live 2004, $6. I know that's one of your personal favorites. NBA Live 06, $5. NBA 2K9, $8. NBA 2K10, $16. So you can buy that used with Kobe on the cover, etc. $16. NBA 2K12, $10. NBA 2K13, $10. And NBA 2K14, which is one of the most, if not the most heavily modded games in the history of basketball video games, $14. That's pretty wild. So if there's somebody out there that wants to start a PC classic or retro, whatever you want to call it, basketball gaming collection, and they want 5 lives, 5 2Ks, etc., you could reasonably do that at a very, very good price.
And those are some excellent releases all around. There's some great mods still available for many of them. They will work on at least up to Windows 10. Windows 11 does have some problems with those older games, as we've said before. But yeah, for under $100 US, obviously, you can get some great games to start that, to tip off that retro gaming collection and play them on a current PC, on a new PC. So yeah, you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars to collect or to have the retro basketball gaming experience. So that's some great advice right there.
And some of those are some of the best titles in those companies' history of making games.
Sure.
Like NBA Live 2004, NBA Live 2000, NBA 2K10, NBA 2K12, 2K9 was a popular release, 2K14's mods. Like, there's so many great titles in there. And like we had stated on prior shows, you can get these games to run on Windows 10, Windows 7, all of that stuff. And if you have any issues with it, hit up Andrew and I. Hit up the NLSC, maybe start a thread on there or comment on one of the videos, and we'd love to help.
Definitely. We should mention that NBA 2K9 does have a recurring problem with missing keys. That was a problem from release, so a lot of the copies that are floating around do have missing keys, so you can be unlucky with 2K9.
Be careful with NBA 2K9 because I went through, I want to say 4. I bought 4 different ones, and it only got to the point where 2K support was able, the only way I was able to even run the 4th copy was that I was able to get 2K support involved who got it working for me. So, definitely be careful with NBA 2K9.
And the unfortunate thing is that Steam released, because that was the first game that actually got me to install Steam, because it required it to activate. And to that point, Steam actually devised a fix for the issue, where as long as you had the disk in the drive, it would validate your copy through your Steam client. So they had that workaround working for many years, but then when the servers were shut down, they stopped providing that service. So yeah, you definitely need to either get that key that's still valid. If it is, it will still activate, and if it doesn't, you might have to try going with 2K support and see what they can do for you.
Oh, 100%. And many of the titles that I listed too, if they are for $4 and they only have the jewel case, or it only comes with like a slip case for the CD and whatnot, or maybe it's missing the manual and everything, there's other buying options where it's just a few dollars more, where you can maybe get the original box, right? Or get the original manual, etc. So definitely be a savvy consumer, I would say, and look at all of your options. But, and obviously that didn't factor in shipping, but to be able to, for a base price, to be able to get 5 of the most classic lives and 5 of the most classic 2Ks for $82, that's obviously US. I think that's a pretty good deal.
Well, even if you just want a couple of those games, a couple of those old favorites, if you no longer have your copies, or you've never checked them out, you just like to give them a look for the first time, you can get a couple of them for 2 or 3 of them for about $20.
Oh my God, yeah, exactly. Like if you're really partial to like the early 2000s NBA Lives, like Live 2003, Live 2004, and Live 2006, and Live 06, hell, you could get all 3 of those for under $30 and spend countless hours of having fun and installing mods and etc.
It's kind of funny that it's easier to get your hands on those PC releases, even easier to get your hands on Live 95 or 96 PC through eBay than it is to get NBA 2K17 now that it's removed from the Steam store.
Oh, no, 100%. I think one of the things that's frustrating for a lot of people is how games like NBA 2K19, if they're still on Steam, or 2K20, even though they're a few years old, they stay at that $60 mark. One good thing about collecting and playing some of these classic games, for NBA 2K or NBA Live, is the fact that you can get them for a lot cheaper, the prices that they should be at this point, like the deals that I mentioned, and you can feel good about that purchase. You know what I mean? And you can still have a lot of fun with those games.
Definitely. And, that is a deliberate tactic on 2K's part to keep the price at that high level rather than discount it, because whatever extra sales they might make with people collecting at that cheaper price, they are pushing people towards the newer game, which is why the newer game goes on sale, and of course then they hopefully make up that revenue with the recurrent revenue mechanics. But the same things happen with the WWE 2K series, that it's been taken off. The older games have just been taken off Steam recently as well. Of course, they removed the original Playgrounds when they got the rights to 2K, when they got the agreement with Sega to have 2K Playgrounds 2 when it came under their umbrella. So we see this happen all the time.
I agree. You know what game, though, on Steam was relatively cheap? Fair price, more than fair price, because I would have paid $1,000 for it, and that we played just today, and it was a life-changing experience.
That sounds an awful lot like Garfield Kart.
Of course you would know, because your life has changed so much.
Of course,
since that up, and we had our head-to-head session. Our listeners, they've heard us bring up Garfield Kart multiple times, and the Steam reviews on this game are hilarious. It gets a 9 out of 10, I want to say, for a score. Most everybody talks about it positively, but there's a lot of funny comments like, Garfield Kart is life-changing. This is what it did for me. This is how my life got turned around by installing this game and everything. But as we noticed when we played it today, all jokes aside, it's a good game. It's graphically good. It's fun on the sticks. We had a few really good races. Yeah, I actually like the game.
Back in the 90s, the only great kart racing game was Mario Kart on Super Nintendo. You had a couple of clones on PC. There was Wacky Wheels, if you've ever played that one. Scunny Kart was a rip-off. There's a long history there that I encourage people to check out. Interesting history with those two games. But they were okay, Wacky Wheels being the superior game of the two, but there was never really that great kart racing game on PC. You had to go to console for those, for that type of a racing game. But Garfield Kart, we said it before we started recording, it's better than it has any right to be. It's better than it needed to be. It could easily just be another quick cash grab for pausing for the Garfield company. But it's actually a really solid game.
Yeah, there was a game that came out for Jaguar 64-bit called Atari Karts.
All right.
I don't know if you remember that one.
No.
But my brothers and I had a lot of fun with that game. It's actually one of the better kart racing games. And that is the only other memorable kart racing game that I can remember playing from, back in the day, around the time when Super Mario Kart was fantastic. I still think Super Mario Kart for the Super NES is the best kart racing game of all time and one of the best Super Nintendo titles.
Ahead of 64? Ahead of Mario Kart 64?
Oh, yeah, by far for me. Absolutely. Yeah, for me, I enjoy it. There's a lot of nostalgia behind that. I just enjoy the control over the kart. Ghost Valley with Toad never gets old. I could run through that over and over and over again and spend hours on it, even on time trial, and it's just a blast. I like the courses. I like the battle modes even more in the Super NES version. Yeah, I just love Super Mario Kart. However, Garfield Kart Furious Racing, it's fair priced on Steam. It has split screen co-op and online leaderboards, obviously single player and whatnot. It's very much like Mario Kart as far as like choosing your items, hitting blocks and then your items appear. You have shells that track and find your opponent, or ones that just shoot straight ahead. And it's not shells, they're actually pies, because it's Garfield and Garfield loves pie. And it's very much like Mario Kart, like you called it, a Mario Kart clone. But the graphics are amazing on it. I really love the visual appeal of the game. And it's really fun to control your character in that game. And like you said, it even worked great for you over Parsec. Like it was, to be able to play a racing game over Parsec with you being the guest and for you to perform as well as you did, that's fantastic.
I was very impressed with that, because we've had some issues trying to play with my connection, the speed of my connection, trying to play some games before, with just having that the responsiveness that I need to be competitive. But until that last race, when I, by my own error, fell off the bridge into the water and put myself back in 8th place, I was competing. I came second to your those first two races.
Yeah, and you actually almost beat me in that second race.
That was close.
Yeah, we started the final lap with you in front of me, actually, because I got beamed up by that UFO. And it slowed me down. There's a lot of cool things like that with the game. I think my only issue with Garfield Kart is the pace when you're not hitting arrows and you're not on a track that's filled with arrows is kind of slow.
It is a little bit, yeah. I did notice that. It's funny how we have the same comments about basketball games as we do other games, the pace and the mechanics.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? You want to have that fun, loose experience, and you want to have control over the action and over your destiny, and you want good competition. And Garfield Kart does bring that. I can't believe how much we're talking about Garfield Kart on the NLSC podcast, but we just talked about it so much on previous episodes as far as kind of poking fun at it, and at the same time referencing those Steam reviews and whatnot, but it really is a good game, and I definitely recommend it to people. However, Teddy Bear the Gamer had actually asked us to revisit a couple of the NBA in the Zone games because he really enjoys that series. I think he enjoys that era of Konami games and whatnot. And so we were finally able to get on the sticks, Andrew, and we played the original NBA in the Zone and NBA in the Zone 2, both on the same team.
That was a lot of fun. I haven't spent as much time with those games as Teddy has or you have, but it's I have played them before. We played it the other day, and I do really enjoy them. And it's always interesting to see what was happening at the same time that I was really into the NBA Live games of the era. And what's interesting about those first two NBA in the Zone games by Konami is that they're kind of a hybrid between the sim and arcade style, to me at least, because you've got that 5-on-5, you've got rules being enforced, but you've got players jumping a bit higher than normal, the pace is a bit quicker than perhaps some of the other sim games of the time. You don't have in the first game you don't have the substitutions. You just those some rather interesting actually 5-man lineups that they've chosen to have that most stimulating lineup on the floor. Not necessarily the starting 5 of those teams at the time, but it is interesting that they went with that style. It makes for a lot of fun. Those two games that we played were a blast.
Yeah, I want to bring up our first session actually on the original NBA in the Zone. We used the Warriors, so it was Tim Hardaway, Latrell Sprewell, and Chris Mullin. And you talk about the kind of the sim and arcade elements and kind of mashed together. I think it works well for that series. I think the games are fun, but you have to go into the game understanding that you're going to be able to use Chris Mullin a lot like Julius Erving. Like attacking the rim, he's going to do a lot. Like we were talking about that during the game, he's going to do a lot of fancy dunks. His head's going to be at the rim, etc. And the computer is going to use players like Kendall Gill, like Steph Curry.
Wow, so Kendall Gill was a great player in his own right. A superb defender, he could score as well, but he wasn't making 40-foot threes constantly.
50-foot sometimes I felt like they were taking. Like they were, it was wild.
Half court.
From like right inside half court.
Logo Gill.
We played. Yeah, Logo Gill. We played against the Hornets, and some of the dunks that Larry Johnson did were outstanding. Some ridiculous hooks by Alonzo Mourning, but Kendall Gill was firing over and over again from like 40 or 45 feet. And he was making some of them, and it kept them in the game. And I think just going into those games with an open mind, saying the direction was definitely a mix of sim and arcade. And really, I got to be honest with you, I think a lot of the appeal to NBA in the Zone, both the first one and NBA in the Zone 2, is the vibes, right? The music, the 90s vibes, the
Definitely.
Music in the original one that plays in, for each quarter and it changes it up, the art style, the big blocks. You notice there was a lot of big blocks in both games, in the in your face action. I think it's the vibes that really, get you to want to play those games and continue playing them. And then in the second game, we ended up winning that game on NBA in the Zone. Really strong performances by Mullin, Sprewell, and Hardaway, but mostly Mullin from memory. We played NBA in the Zone 2, and as you noted, Jordan is on the bench for the Bulls as M guard, but it's literally his face.
It is
like it's his cyber face. You can see it in the game. So we obviously started him, and we used the Bulls, and then was it C forward? I want to say C forward is Barkley on the Rockets, and he's on the bench. So we started him, and it's Barkley's face. So it is really interesting that they tried to get away with that. And they didn't. They actually got in trouble with that. And they got threatened to lose the NBA license.
Was not happy about that whatsoever. To have C forward and M guard, and indeed on the Lakers S center as well, because Shaq was exclusive to NBA Live in '96 and '97, if you recall. He returned to all other games in subsequent years, but yes, they also had a roster player for Shaq. But again, it looks like Shaq. Yes, they've changed the numbers. Yes, they've got a different surname based on their position, but it is those players. But that game's a lot of fun as well. It's perhaps a little bit more leading back towards the sim direction, but it's still got a bit of that hybrid style. Definitely a lot of fun. But going back to the first game, NBA in the Zone, the first one has some of the shoddiest passing mechanics, I think, in the history of basketball gaming. I'll still give the title of worst to Kid Sports Basketball because it's based on a soccer game and a shovelware soccer game at that, where you will easily fly out of bounds if it's a diagonal pass 9 times out of 10. But for a competent game, a competent AAA game, if you will, it's probably among the worst. You have to select the recipient, not just for direct passing or icon passing, as in later games, but for every single pass you make. If you're playing co-op, you really have to pay attention to that. Otherwise, you're just going to be passing, or there's a good chance you'll be passing back and forth between yourself and a CPU player rather than to your friend playing. In that first NBA in the Zone, you do have to press a button to select the recipient and then press pass. It can slow things down. You do have to pause and pay attention to where the pass indicator is showing up, and that does leave you open to a steal some of the time.
The pass mechanics were frustrating both of us in the original in the Zone, and it made it so our offense often looked clunky because you had to push the button multiple times to get to the player that you wanted to pass to. So let's say you wanted to pass to Chris Mullin, and Chris Mullin was, on the left wing. It might go through like 2 or 3 players before it actually lands on Mullin and you can make the pass. So I think it's definitely a poor passing mechanic. I can't even put Kid Sports Basketball in the running for worse because it's not a sim game, and NBA in the Zone was like a sim basketball game with the NBA license. So I'm not even going to compare those two.
A Konami product. It's Konami, and they have made a lot of great games.
Yeah, Konami's made so many great games. But yeah, I think that's the worst part of that game. I think otherwise, the only other major issue I have with NBA in the Zone is it's really hard to play defense. It is the offense, the dribble moves, the spin moves, all of that stuff are so dominant that oftentimes it's really easy to get to the hoop and finish over and over and over again. I think that's the only other big issue I have with the game. I mean, blocks are absolutely satisfying in the original in the Zone and in the Zone 2. They're loud. When you time them, it feels really good. You can swat shots right out of the air, etc. And but yeah, those are the only 2 major issues I have with that game. So were there any other issues for you outside of those passing mechanics?
I think the post-basket cuts are a bit too much. They always show players running back and celebrating, and it's cool the first couple of times, but you can't immediately skip them, so it does get a bit frustrating. It slows the pace down a little bit. The pace of gameplay between baskets is fantastic. It's great, feels great on the sticks, but when you score and it's always going to that celebration cut after a basket, it does slow things down a little bit.
I can agree with that. I think that they overdid it in the later NBA in the Zones too, where after every single dunk, the player pumps his fist. Like that, why does that have to be at the end of, after every single dunk? It should have been, here and there, every now and then. So in relation to NBA in the Zone 2, I want to bring that back up. So we talked about Jordan, we talked about Barkley, we talked about Shaq, those guys, they tried to sneak their faces into the game and whatnot. But there's a whole plethora of legends that are hidden in the create a player. Like 6'6", 216, you can create Michael Jordan, right? There's I want to say it's something like 7'1", 275 or something like that. It's Wilt Chamberlain. Yeah. You can create a player. The model you choose is 7'1", 275. There's Larry Bird. I want to say it's like 6'9", 220. There's Jerry West in there. There's Barkley to create his exact height and weight. They really tried to sneak legends in there in order to give people a more all-around experience. And I know they got in trouble for it, but I appreciate it. I think you appreciate it too. We used to use those legends all the time in NBA in the Zone too, but that was a risky move.
Oh, it was, and there's a reason that the future games in the series turned not Michael Jordan into a white guy with completely different name and different numbers and whatnot. They had to play it a bit safer, as other games did with their roster players. But, I said it after we finished that game, that may be one of the most fun times I've had using a roster player in a basketball video game.
We killed it with M-Guard.
Yeah.
I mean, what did he have, like 50 points in 4-minute quarters?
Definitely over 30. About 38 or something, I think, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was like maybe I think it was between 40 and 50. But he does the leaning slam in the game, like almost like the kiss the rim dunk. His shot looks great when you're doing his fadeaway. I know it's just the generic shot in the game, but you're picturing MJ doing it, right? You're doing your fadeaways, your athletic moves around the hoop, your mid-range shots and everything. And that was a blast. And both of us couldn't wait to use M-Guard on both ends of the floor. I almost felt like for a little bit we were fighting over him.
It's crazy.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we did end up winning that game as well. That was really outstanding. And Rodman, what a rim protector.
Oh, yeah.
In the zone, too. He was swatting everything. He was ripping down all the rebounds. He was stopping stuff at the hoop. That was a lot of fun. I think my biggest annoyance, and I talked to you about this after we played with In the Zone 2, is that double team logic. They will literally double team every spot on the floor, and the defenders move in this ridiculous cat-like speed to get to each spot, to get to each ball handler. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I mean, we ended up picking it apart, and it actually helped us win at the end of the game. But the double teaming looks foolish. It's silly. It happens way too often. And that's part of the reason why sometimes I actually enjoy playing NBA In the Zone, the original one, more, because it feels like the gameplay is a little bit more balanced.
The defense isn't so cheesy and overpowering, for sure. I mean, it's actually the Kendall Gills of the world hitting 40-foot threes that is the cheesy part of that. But you can kind of contend at the other end by getting to the hoop a little bit easier. The other improvement that they do make in the Zone 2 is that they bring back directional passing. Hold the direction towards the recipient, press pass, that's all it takes. Which, in lieu of having the icon passing or direct passing, is all you need. And you've talked about it before, that when we go back to these games, you like to try to get to the headspace of the developers and wonder what they were thinking, why they designed things a certain way. And that got me thinking about why they made that choice with the first NBA In the Zone, and of course then fixed that in the Zone 2. And my speculation, I could be way off on this, but my speculation is that they couldn't get directional passing working properly in the first game and simply implemented the pass selection as a workaround for that, and then they got it working for the second game, so they got rid of that mechanic, the clunky mechanic.
Right. Why else would they put that mechanic in there?
Exactly.
Because it is incredibly frustrating, whether you're playing solo against the computer or you're playing co-op. In fact, it felt a little bit more frustrating playing co-op doing it, because I felt bad for you. Because I would see you sprinting down the floor and you get by your defender and you have like a wide open lane to get like a dunk. And I'm feverishly pushing
frantically switching.
Yeah, try switching between players to try to get the thing to say pass under your name so I can throw you the pass.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think that I bet if we talked to a developer, they would say that, yeah, they never got directional passing figured out before release, so that's the way they did it, because that mechanic makes no sense.
Definitely one of the most illogical and clunky mechanics that we've come across. Doesn't ruin the game, but certainly is a detriment to the gameplay. But I will say that the tip dunks were very satisfying.
That Spreewell tip dunk that you had in the original In the Zone, I almost put that in the top 10.
Loved it.
Because it was perfect timing. I missed the three with Tim Hardaway, and right when it came off the rim, you dove in, and you got that, caught it with one hand and flushed it. And there was also a really good tip dunk in NBA In the Zone 2 that happened as well. The dunks are great in the games. The shooting is fantastic. Like when you hit a shot, it just feels good, right? And the form of the players looks good. The dribbling is a little bit overpowering. The dribble moves, they're like the spin moves are a little bit too crazy and whatnot, but the dribbling still feels fun. And it's fun to try to put chain together moves, do a spin move into a dunk, etc. I remember reading a review about NBA in the Zone 2, and it stated that it gave it something like a crazy high score. It was like a 9 out of 10 or something like that. I don't know if it was IGN or GameSpot. I can't remember. But they were like, this is the basketball game of choice if you love the NBA this year. And it just, talked so highly of the game and, the authenticity aspect and the fun aspect and everything. And I can see what they were saying in that review. What's crazy, and I think you would agree, is NBA in the Zone and NBA in the Zone 2 are absolutely night and day different than the NBA Live games at the time. Like the player models, the animations, the camera view, the presentation, the music, just it feels like an entirely different basketball gaming experience.
It stands out as its own thing, which I think was very important back in the day. That you had some games trying to do the same thing and trying to compete in that pure sim space, for lack of a better term. And then you had those games that were doing the hybrids or the complete arcade games like a Jam. So, as we've said so many times before, having these choices and these different experiences, these different basketball gaming experiences available to us, was so valuable back in the day. And I spent most of my time with NBA Live and Jam, as I've said before, but it's been so great to go back and discover a lot of these games that I'd maybe heard about but never really played, and to finally spend some time with them. And I would definitely encourage people to, if you are into retro gaming or would like to get into it, they are a couple of games that you might want to pick up. I got mine fairly cheaply. I think it was about $10 Australian for, or maybe less, for the first game. The second game was a bit more expensive, I think maybe $15-20. I did get that one complete in box, though, in case, with a manual, so that was why that was a bit more expensive, but definitely worth it.
I want to point this out. NBA in the Zone and NBA in the Zone 2 make a much better NBA Jam type experience than NBA Jam 2000. Easily. I just want to put that out there because it has like the NBA Jam type arcade elements, but mixed in with, like you stated, sim stuff, like sim rules, 5-on-5, all of that. Like, it's overall just a really good sim / arcade experience. And one thing that I want to tell our listeners too is we're not done revisiting these NBA in the Zone games. We want to talk about NBA in the Zone 98, 99, etc. So we'll talk about those on future shows when we play them.
And definitely keep hitting us up with those suggestions as well, because we obviously do have big collections between us, a lot of overlap, obviously, but a few ones that maybe I have that Derek doesn't, and vice versa. So hit us up, and we'll dig them out of the collection and play them and share those videos on social media and the NLSC YouTube channel, of course. But any excuse to pull out an old favorite or a game we haven't spent as much time with, Derek, we'll take it.
How much fun has it been to play co-op on these games and revisit them?
I'm actually preferring co-op at the moment to playing against each other.
Yeah, it's a shared experience towards a common goal, right?
Yeah.
Like to win the game, make great highlights, look at the stats that we compiled together, all of that stuff. Overcome adversity. I think that's one of our favorite things. Like in the NBA in the Zone 2, we started out the game down, I think it was 16-6. And we kind of like pulled it together. We started playing better defense. We started going to M guard more, aka Michael Jordan, and we ended up pulling out that win. So yeah, I'm still blown away by the fact that you can host in Australia, I can host in the U.S., in New Hampshire, and both of us can have such a strong experience. Like when I connected with you and played Fox Sports NBA Basketball 2000, and I was the guest, it felt really good. And then same thing when you connected when I hosted NBA in the Zone. So it's nice to share our collections. It's nice to have those shared experiences. And I encourage our listeners to try to play co-op on some of these games if you haven't before. Because, a lot of people think of, I'll play against the computer, or if I play with another human, I want to play head to head. But let's be honest, co-op can be equally fun or even more fun.
Well, as I've said before, I always used to play co-op with my cousin back in the day, so it's a very familiar experience to me in that regard, so I'm all for it. I'm sure we will get competitive again at some point. We are working our way through the road trip on Fire Edition, NBA Jam on Fire Edition. Played a few more games of that as well this past week, and man, that Hawks team gave us some That surprised us, that Hawks game giving us some trouble. The gold challenge, that is.
Well, listeners, we didn't lose.
Yes.
We went 4-0 in our most recent session. 2 of the challenges that we did were gold challenges, and 2 of them, and one was silver and one was bronze. Yeah, that Hawks team, it was Josh Smith and Spud Webb, if I remember correctly.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, and they took us down to the wire. We were using Julius Erving and Daryl Dawkins. We're usually really good with them, and I thought we were in that game, but we have slight disadvantages when we use them as opposed to using the Supersonics. Because when we're using the Supersonics, Peyton is better at steals and at threes than Erving, so I'm able to be more effective in those areas. And Kemp is overall, it seems like he's a little bit faster than Dawkins. His dribble moves work better than Dawkins, and his dunks even feel like they're a little bit more effective than Dawkins. So I think that was a really good challenge with a team that we're probably not as good with, and it was really nice for us to pull that out. But, we went to our go-to Supersonics in the other 2 gold challenges that we took on, and I thought it was fantastic the way we played with Peyton and Kemp. And yeah, that game just doesn't get old. In the first game of the night, we actually used the Bulls, and you used Benny the Bull and I used Derrick Rose, and you had a lot of great highlights with Benny. I was getting a lot of steals with Derrick Rose, and that game, I got lost in the action, and I was actually sad when that game was over. I was like, oh, is that going to be the only time we use the Bulls for the night? Because I was just having so much fun using that team, and it was kind of a fresh experience.
I always pick Benny these days because I don't want to use Pippen, quite frankly. That's but also it's also fun to see a mascot running around the court for a start. He's got a great 3-point shooting rating. Not so much on the dunks. He's only got a dunk of 2, so he will throw it down, because the great thing about Jam is that even a lower rating can be effective. Again, this is something that NBA Playgrounds really whiffed on by having, if you were below a certain point, I think a rating of 6 or 60 in the second game, you just weren't as effective as you should be with a great player. And of course, the whole level up system, which was just ridiculous grinding. That's why Jam is still the gold standard. It's why I still say On Fire Edition has a legitimate case as the best NBA Jam game and one of the best arcade basketball games. Period. Yeah, so much fun, and we're almost through the East. We're getting the road trip done. We're beating the league.
Yeah, it's just really nice that we can play a couple games and it doesn't take forever, right? Like if I only have 20 minutes or 25 minutes, or you only have 25 minutes, we could say, all right, let's connect real quick and just get a couple quick games in, and we can make progress. We can feel good about our results, all of that stuff. And it's awesome having that ability to go to an arcade game and not always have to be, playing a sim title, right? Because you can play, the games go by faster. You can get immersed in the action throughout the game more often. And I'm glad that we both have good arcade basketball collections and that we enjoy the games.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community. But it's funny that we've been talking about these old games, yet we have news about an upcoming game, NBA 2K23, the first look trailer, to talk about.
Was it the Jabberwocky dancers that got you hooked?
I think it was the Curry Go to Sleep celebration.
Yeah, I mean, the trailer didn't excite me. It didn't do anything for me because all the gameplay mechanics and everything and even there's just like the lighting, all of that stuff, like it just looks just like 2K22 to me. Like if somebody said, here's a 2K22 video I made, but I'm calling it a 2K23 trailer in order to get clout or in order to get like
And that
more
happens.
clicks and all
That
of that
does
stuff.
happen.
That does happen, but I would believe it, right?
Yeah.
Because nothing in that video outside the going to sleep animation with Steph Curry, you know, it looked like NBA 2K22, all the animations. I didn't see anything new in there. Obviously, they're focusing on extra presentation items like the Curry going to sleep thing, the Jabberwocky dancing, all of that stuff. And I don't play the games for that. I guess you could say, like, that stuff doesn't ever get me super pumped up. And I think that's probably the same way it is with you. We actually haven't talked much about the trailer off air, so I am curious about what you thought of it.
Well, look, I do appreciate those elements. The same way that I go back to NBA Live 10, and I appreciate that Steve Nash is sitting on the floor rather than being on the bench, as he did back in the day. I mean, those little...
Right, but it's not why you play. That's the point. Like, it's not why... Yeah, it's not going to be... If you're already like, oh, well, the gameplay looks like just like a previous title that I wasn't really fond of, you're not going to get excited about Steph Curry doing the sleep.
No. And again, if Live 10's gameplay didn't hold up, if I didn't enjoy that back then or now, then Steve Nash sitting on the bench, sitting on the floor instead of sitting on the bench, it's neither here nor there. It's a nice touch, but it's ultimately pales in comparison to if the inferior gameplay experience, if that was the case. So absolutely. I would love to get excited and hyped by these trailers, and maybe it's because I've been doing this for over 20 years now, covering previous seasons, and I've played a lot of games, as you have, and we've seen... we've been disappointed and felt misled by previews before, so it's hard not to be a bit cynical, or certainly at least take things with a grain of salt, and more than a grain of salt in some cases. But with these trailers, they're all from cinematic angles, so they're going to be showing the game at its best possible light, And that means that there's some animations that are going to look wonky when you're actually going into them from a gameplay scenario. You're not going to see that because they've picked the clips that make the game look the best, right? It's not raw gameplay, so it's hard to get really excited about it. And even if it is raw gameplay, there's stuff that you can't feel and can't know until you actually get your hands on the game. You got your hands on the sticks and playing the game yourself the way you like to play it, the modes you like to play, and see how all the new gameplay mechanics or adjusted gameplay mechanics and what they've changed and what they've broken and what they've fixed, as the case may be, how that all works. You can't tell that until you've got your hands on the game. Even raw gameplay, although it may show a little bit more, doesn't give you the full picture of the game. You do need to experience it for yourself. And yeah, a cinematic trailer, it just doesn't get me that pumped.
I have a couple things to say, actually. You brought up Steve Nash, too. So I really liked NBA 2K7. It was the first 2K that my brothers and I, all three, spent a lot more time on than NBA Live, for the obvious reason that NBA Live 07 for 360 was terrible overall as a product. But I was super excited for 2K8 because I love 2K7. And when I booted up 2K8 and it felt really good, I was super excited to see Steve Nash lick his fingers, right? While he was bringing up the ball. Like he does the licking fingers thing in between his dribbles.
Oh, yeah.
Like he did in real life. And like, if I like the game and I'm excited for the game, and maybe it's based on a previous release or whatnot, and I see something like that in a trailer for the game or a preview for the game, yeah, I'm going to be like, hey, this is great. But when everything kind of looks like a prior title that I wasn't super fond of, and I'm not optimistic about the direction the games are going in or the company's going in, etc., it's hard for me to get excited about that stuff. Another point that I wanted to make too is, and I saw some comments about this, they were like, man, it's the same thing every year. One thing that I've noticed is we're now going through cycles where it doesn't seem like they're doing much at all with the visual appearance of these games as far as like changing it up. Look how different stuff looks from NBA 2K14 for Xbox One, NBA 2K15, NBA 2K16, NBA 2K17, then NBA 2K18. There's a lot of differences visually in those games, from the lighting, from the way the crowd reacts to stuff, the crowd lighting, the reflections on the floor. the players' body types, all of that stuff. Like, for better or for worse, they were at least trying to make it different each year, or most every year, right? NBA 2K7 and 2K8, I just brought those up. 2K7 overall had a very dark look to it, right? The lighting, they ended up enhancing that for NBA 2K8. And the lighting, the game ended up popping more and everything. And it became more visually appealing. They even improved the way shadows look on the floor. So, like, what it feels like now is each year the games are looking very much the same, right? And I think that bums people out because they're looking for like a different type of graphical and presentation experience, and they're not getting that. And I think you might agree. Like, for me, NBA 2K21, 2K22, and it looks like 2K23 are all going to basically look the same from a gameplay perspective.
They have a very similar aesthetic with the lighting and whatnot. It does, as you say, it looks like somebody got 2K22, apart from the new animations, of course, the Jabberwockies, Steph Curry's go to sleep gesture. Apart from that, you see a lot of familiar animations. We can speculate that maybe they chain together better, but again, they're showing it from the ideal camera angles, the ideal clips are being used. They're not going to show ones where players kind of warped into an animation or something look a bit clunky. They're not going to show that. That's the kind of thing you're going to see in raw gameplay. And even the raw gameplay that they show, they can go out of their way to make the game look as good as it possibly can. And certainly that's reasonable, and it shows that the game can be played that way. But unfortunately, you do have those moments, and you will have those legacy issues that we will come across. And there's always that first couple of weeks where everybody says, oh, it's so much better. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just hating on the new game, as you always do. And then after a couple of weeks, people will start admitting the legacy issues. And hopefully, they have made improvements this year. I want that. I do want to spend more time with it than I have 2K21 and 2K22. I want to be impressed. I want to enjoy the revamped Jordan Challenge and be able to play 2K23 regularly, in addition to other older games and other older favorites that I have. But I am expecting those legacy issues to still be in the game.
Yeah, I am too. I'm expecting very much similar graphics and gameplay to 2K22. What my brother and I are going to do when we get it is we're going to put Legends on the same team like we do every year. And it's a good way for us to experience the gameplay for the first time and whatnot. We're going to play against the CPU co-op and, just see how it plays. Is it fun? How's the pace? All of that stuff. And then we'll use regular teams and go against each other. We'll use the classic teams, which I'm not expecting to be fixed. I'm not expecting them to pay the attention to detail to the retro players' signatures, tendencies, attributes. And I'm not expecting them to pay the proper respects to those teams. But we will put them on the floor and we'll look through the rosters like we do every year and, hope for the best. But I'm gonna try to make the best of it like I do every year. I'm gonna get the PC version and the console version. On the PC version, if I like it enough, I'll get into modding. Maybe I'll make some cyber faces. Maybe I'll get involved with a roster or something like that. And for the console version, we'll do what I just said. We'll have our seasons and all of that stuff. But I'm not optimistic that I'm gonna love it.
I'm definitely going to be tempering my expectations, for sure. And that's been my approach for several years now. And I think it's the wise way to go, quite frankly. We used
to get so excited, didn't we? Like, sorry to interrupt you, but we used to get so excited, like the 2K13 midnight release, right?
Oh, sure,
like,
yeah.
We used to get so excited for the new release because we were genuinely loving the company, their direction, and the games and how they were changing them up and doing different things and everything. Like, I miss getting super excited about these games.
I mean, it's not that long ago. Well, I say not that long ago. We are looking at 5 or 6 years with 2K17 and even 2K18, though I dislike that game or certainly don't rate it very highly on that generation among its peers and overall, for reasons that we've discussed before. I was excited about the release.
Yeah, I was really excited about 2K18. I think you remember me talking about it because how much did we love NBA 2K17?
Exactly.
We thought 2K17 was incredibly fun. We thought it was fair to the gamer. We were enjoying the company's direction at that time. You with your NLC Thrill Ho, your playing with the NLSC guys in the rec and whatnot, and my brother and I diving in headfirst to our Ultimate Classic Teams roster, modding the game, playing multiple seasons on the game, me and my two brothers and everything. And we just enjoyed it from a gameplay, presentation, and fairness perspective. So I was really disappointed with 2K18 and still am to this day.
And there is some more news coming next week. It is August. They previously indicated that August would bring us all the real start of the previous season. We did get this early first look trailer dropping here in late July. So next week we will be hearing more about gameplay. So on next week's show we'll be reacting to that news, obviously. And look, hopefully it is good news, but we will be taking it with a grain of salt because, as we've said before, we look back at previous developer blogs and we've identified being misled or indeed lied to in these blogs, and we've identified by comparing the previous year's blog to the latest one, things that they hyped up as great improvements that they've later admitted were band-aid fixes or not exactly what they wanted to do. And yes, of course they're going to promote the game, but then when you see that and when you go and look back and make those comparisons, it becomes harder and harder to believe blogs moving forward. But there is news coming. It will be the start of the, as always, condensed previous season as it is these days, but we'll be covering that and giving our thoughts on next week's show.
Now, you know who wasn't impressed with the trailer? Agent 00. He actually made a video today, I want to say it was, that said, 2K is failing and nobody cares. And he was talking about the trailer. And actually, our next segment has to do with Agent 00. And he had made a video, and it was titled, "Why I Am No Longer Playing 2K." And I know that it's a 30-minute video. We both watched it. And your first response after watching the video, your first comment to me was, Agent 00's video really resonated with me.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted you to dive into, what resonated with you about what he said. I thought it was fantastic. I thought his entire, he's very well spoken. I think you would agree. He's a smart kid, and I really enjoyed his honesty in that video.
He's always done quality content, Agent. He, shout out to him after I did the Rising Cost of My Career article last year. He gave that a shout out on his channel and did some further research, and which went deeper into the numbers and further proved what I was talking about, and was some great research. Definitely check out that video as well. Check out this latest video that he's put out, Why I Stopped Playing NBA 2K. And that feeling of disappointment and that growing cynicism is something that I can really relate to, because I went through a lot of that with EA over the years, where it started out where there's all that access and they're talking to everybody, but then it comes down to who can do something for us, who's got the biggest audience, who's doing this kind of content, who's willing to shill for the game. And 2K has definitely gone in that direction with the content creators they talk about, and the shouldering out, giving the cold shoulder to the old guard and people who've been there from the start. Because as we'll go into, he's been playing the game since NBA 2K10 and was really getting into the content. Again, great content for many years, and just feeling that disappointment and feeling push out because he's being honest, and it really resonated with me, because I feel like the more honest that I've been, and you feel this as well with your content and the content we've created together on the NLSC, that it does put us at a disadvantage as far as working with publishers. And it's often the suits. It's the PR, it's the marketing department rather than the developers, who are usually willing to listen to feedback and seek it out on social media, but being pushed out because you're not shilling for the game, basically. I definitely could identify with the frustration that he felt there, and the feeling that things had changed as 2K has become more and more successful, and they're able to pick and choose who they work with, and they give the cold shoulder to people who are more honest with their feedback and who are willing to openly criticize them and not just chill. It's disappointing, because he's made such great content that to see him so disillusioned with the process and shut out as he did, and also some of the times that the things got really personal that he talked about as well, is just quite rotten.
Yeah, as a result too of us being honest here, and with him being honest and everything, we don't get promoted the same, right? We're not going to have the same content context. We're not going to have the retweets. We're not going to have the shares and all of that stuff from the, the higher sub accounts or the higher follower accounts, from the publishers, all of that stuff. And that's unfortunate. One thing I didn't know about Agent 00 is that he started out as a live gamer. He was really into NBA Live, and then it was 2K10 when it seems that he made the switch.
That's something else that I kind of
2K.
resonated with as well. Starting out as a live gamer, I got into 2K and 2K13, so a little bit later, when they got the right stick drilling, is when I really was able to get into it. I've gone back and enjoyed 2K10, 11, and 12 more since really adjusting to the 2K style and spending a bit more time with them and not having a live game to play, of course. But I did also really relate to that, growing up a live gamer and then making that switch to 2K.
No, 100%. He also stated that NBA 2K17 was kind of his takeoff year as far as getting, followers and subscribers and, really having a voice. And he was a sharpshooter he was known as like the best sharpshooter, I guess, in that game for some time, as he stated in the video. And 2K17 is also one of our favorite titles. He said that he did have some problems with it related to patching and whatnot, but that was kind of his takeoff game as an influencer. And just so people know, he's been around in the community for a while and has quite the following. Agent 00 Exclusive, which is a new channel I want to say that he started, has over 100,000 subscribers. He had, the last time I checked on that Why I'm No Longer Playing 2K video, it had 305,000 views. So, this doesn't look good on 2K's part either, because this is a very popular member of the 2K community and the basketball gaming community, etc. So, as he stated in the video, he believes that the publishers and the marketing team probably don't like him very much right now, but he doesn't seem to care either. No, but he shared a story about your favorite person, Ronnie 2K. So Agent 00 and Ronnie got into kind of like a little playful spat and whatnot. And Ronnie, said publicly that he signed an endorsement for Agent 00's visa in order to allow him into the country, and kind of said it in like a, I don't know, you owe me type way and whatnot. That's the way it came off. Him and Ronnie ended up, I think, fixing things and kind of getting along after that. But he's never been able to let go of that, it seems like. And I don't blame him, because that should never have been said out loud by Ronnie. And as it turns out, that Agent 00 didn't even use that endorsement, because he had all these other endorsements, and I guess the endorsement came in late and whatnot. But I know that you're not the biggest fan of Ronnie, and I know there's definitely two sides to Ronnie, and we've seen both of them publicly at times. So I know that you hearing that kind of just bummed you out.
See, I actually had forgotten about that. I remember actually talking about it since he brought it up, and and refreshed my memory in that video. I remember talking about that with on a previous show before you joined the show. We covered that when it happened, and we said how unprofessional it was, and it really is. I mean, there's banter, and then there's bringing up a personal issue like that, and it really felt like a below the belt shot to try and put Agent in his place, and that was just so out of bounds. If Agent is holding a bit of a grudge there, or certainly bringing it up as he does, absolutely fair game. There's a reason I bring up Ronnie's tweet about we are more than a Barbie game, responding to that person talking about hairstyles in 2K17. It was ridiculous, because the very next day they released a shoe blog. We're not a Barbie game. You look at now, we've got the we've got the fashion shows and all the focus on cosmetic items in the city and the neighborhood. So the whole we're more than a Barbie dress-up game just has aged like milk. But there is that side to him where he'll take those shots and really just come off so unprofessional. And look, banter's banter, but he takes it beyond that. And certainly that stuff with Agent was very personal. I don't blame him for... I wouldn't blame him if he didn't mend fences with Ronnie after that, because that was really out of bounds.
So a couple other things that Agent 00 brought up is, once he got such a big following, he never censored himself. He was always very truthful and honest.
Exactly.
And he wanted to talk about the games honestly. He wanted to upload content that was realistic when discussing the games. And then he felt like he was starting to get shut out from the publishers and from the major 2K influencers. and whatnot. And so in order to not be censored, he refused to, be part, I guess, of that machine. Like, he refused to sign any contracts with 2K. So because he refused to be censored, he felt like he stopped being invited to events. I think the last event he went to was 2K19. He said he wasn't sure if he made it to the 2K20 event or not. They took his face out of the game, so he's no longer a usable character in the newer NBA 2Ks and everything. He received many brand deals for promotion and whatnot, and 3 of those deals got blocked by 2K because they didn't want Agent 00 to represent them. And, there was a decent amount of money involved in this, but 2K didn't care about that. And they knew that, Agent 00 had been critical of 2K and he wasn't going to stop anytime soon. And he was realistically critical. So they didn't, they blocked those brand deals. So obviously he feels like a sense of betrayal, right? And whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, I recommend anybody to go and watch that video who likes basketball gaming and wants to hear about some of the stuff that's going on with influencers and 2K and everything, because he spoke a lot of truth in that 30 plus minutes. And like I stated, he's very well spoken.
He did. He was very honest about it, about the politics of content creation and working with developers. And again, I really relate to that, especially with the last community manager for NBA Live, giving the cold shoulder to the old guard, as I've talked about before, and because he wanted to focus on that younger, new demographic and just have his hand-picked content creators who he'd give all that information to and all that access to just stop responding to all the old guard like myself. And because we kept bringing up things that he didn't want to hear, saying we need to have more NBA strategy in the game. We need to have a deeper franchise mode. Roster editing needs to be more robust. You need to bring back playoffs mode. We don't want to hear that, so we just stop listening to that crowd and bring in people that we can give information to, and they will promote the game and talk about the game in a way that we want. And that obviously happens with 2K as well, and it's a real change in the way things work, and with the explosion of online content creation and people getting really big, and YouTubers getting hundreds of thousands and millions of subscribers and views and being able to make it into a career, there is this whole business side to it that gets very murky, and the contracts that really control what you're allowed to say about the game and everything. It's so different to when we were starting to get access in the early 2000s and just had really great access to the developers and honest interviews and being able to build that rapport with them, and that they were talking to everybody that was covering NBA Live, again talking about EA Sports here obviously, but talking to us, talking to the Gaming Tailgate, talking to everyone else who was covering sports games or basketball games at that time, and just reaching out to everyone and just wanting everybody's feedback and really just focusing on making that great product. But now it's about who's going to push our microtransactions, the current revenue mechanics and whatnot, and who's going to talk about the game in a way that we want. It's very disheartening, and it was kind of rough to watch, because I can see how much it's affected Agent, who has put so many hours, hundreds of thousands of hours into his content over the years, and building up his brand, building that audience, giving them great content. For him to be disillusioned like that and treated that way is, it's an example of everything that's wrong with the current approach to community management and interaction.
Here's a summary of what he said on that topic. He said, 2K has effed the community over the last 5 years, went against what the community wanted, focused on making money over anything else. He only wanted to continue making content because of the community. So that speaks volumes, and that kind of goes along with what we said, because the last 5 years is really like 2K18 forward, right? And that's when we started seeing that direction, go downhill. Another point that I wanted to make is that he stated that basically the 2K developers were nice to him, that there was nothing wrong really with any of the 2K developers, but that it was the publishers. And how many times have we said on this show that the publishers, the suits, all of that stuff are more to blame for the game's direction than anybody else? right? A lot of people want to jump on the developers and whatnot, but oftentimes what the developers are doing is listening to the suits and how they want them to make the game.
They have to.
Correct?
You know,
Right.
they're
So
paying their checks.
I appreciated the fact that he said that. Like he stood up for the developers. He goes,
Exactly, yeah.
he goes, the developers. He said the developers have been nothing but nice to me. I think those were his words in the video. He said it was the publishers that tried to censor him, tried to cut him out, all of that stuff. Another point that I wanted to bring up that he brought up in the video was he said that, and I'm going to relate this back to modding as well in the PC community. He stated that any content for NBA 2K that is made, and I've said this so many times on the podcast, any content that's made to promote 2K, whether somebody's not necessarily supposed to be making money off of that content, think mods, etc. 2K absolutely loves it. Why? Because it puts 2K in people's heads. It gets people thinking about the game. And when people are thinking about the game, they're more likely to purchase the game. Right? So think about the modding community. Think about the Dom2Ks, the Dominus, these really high sub account YouTubers. Sometimes they have over 300,000 subs, etc. And they get hundreds of thousands of views on each video sometimes. But think about how much those people are promoting the game, even though they're using mods that NBA that look like they're really in the game, but NBA 2K doesn't have the license for. Do you think that NBA 2K cares about that? That they're making money off of their YouTube channel, or even modders oftentimes selling their mods to make money? What ends up happening is 2K ends up making more money themselves because it's getting people to buy the games. So I appreciate that he actually touched on that. He didn't say modding in particular, but he said that if people are doing practices that are technically infringing on copyright, or they're making money off of 2K's intellectual property, etc., that 2K doesn't care as long as people are buying the game.
It's a good result for them. It's a good result for them either way. And if they wanted to shut down modding, they could very easily. I mean, people always say that they're doing this and that to make modding harder, to shut down the modding community, or hiring modders to shut down the modding community. No, they could easily do it with lawyers, and we would have no recourse whatsoever. But as you say, it does promote the game in a roundabout way. They can't openly support it or promote it, but they can certainly benefit from it, and they do.
I just want to touch on a couple other things. He stated that there's no upside to getting back into 2K. He said that's because 2K has been hostile or indifferent to him over the last couple of years. He put together a list of what he would rather do other than, either get back into 2K or, make 2K promotional type videos, like working out, watching YouTube, watching Netflix, hanging out with his friends more and everything. And he realized that he would enjoy doing those other things possibly more than making that content. And he stated that, he hates that he feels like he's letting people down by not uploading content, but he felt like he wasn't going anywhere with the content that he, with the direction he was going with that content. He said that since he's freed up time, his fitness, he has hit some of his fitness goals. He is happier. His channels are even doing better than ever. And he said, he kind of ended it stating that he felt like 2K let him down. He said he is in every way at a disadvantage because he refuses to be censored, and that he refuses to not be able to speak his mind. So that's some pretty powerful stuff from a pretty big influencer in the basketball gaming community.
Undoubtedly. And it's why I support him 100% on this, because I can relate to that, having gone through similar things with the changes in community managers with EA over the years, and then finally getting the cold shoulder from the most recent one with Live 19. So because we dare to be honest about it and point out this is a problem, and they don't want to hear that. They just want people to be good little content creators and promote the game and not focus on these issues when they're supposed to be liaising with them to get community feedback and to, I mean, yes, obviously if you are going to work with the publishers to some extent, there is some promotion, if you will. I mean, obviously, when EA were flying me from Australia to first to Canada and then to America to play the games before anyone else, or certainly with other people in those community events, but playing it before they came out and to get my feedback and everything. There is a certain amount of they're hoping that I will promote the game, or certainly get awareness of the game and what they're doing. But at the same time, they always stressed to me that the developers that were at the events and talking to them directly always were asking for that honest feedback. But of course, the publishers do it because it's good PR. Oh, look, we're listening to the community, whatever. But as long as they are listening, then you can have that positive impact. But once that stops and it just becomes all about selling the game and using content creators to shill and restricting them and trying to censor their opinions and try to shut out all negative feedback or criticism, then you have this situation like Agent has encountered. And once again, support him 100% on this.
Yeah, I mean, censoring honest people, shutting out the old guard, censoring honest people who are going to play the game and be honest about it, about, how it plays, how it needs to be improved, being honest about the shady mechanics that are in the game that aren't good for anybody, etc. I think that is the worst possible move because it stifles growth, right? It stifles innovation. It stifles improvement, all of that stuff. And what ends up happening is, like you stated, you have a bunch of good little content creators out there who will basically not be truly critical of the game, not recommend improvements that need to be made to the game. And all they're doing is just promoting the product that's out there. Right. And so, I totally agree with that. And it is frustrating. And I thought it was a really well put together video by him. And I'll say again, he's very well spoken. Like, it's an easy 30-minute listen. I think you would agree.
Definitely worth checking out. As I said, support him 100%. And it's just a shame to see them throw away good content creators, or shut out good content creators, throw away goodwill in the process, because his audience can see what's happened, just as other people in the community can see what's happened. It's just a shame that he's felt that he doesn't feel the passion to create that content, because it's just gone because of how he's been treated, and of course how the game has gone in recent years as well. And you and I have felt that as well, because this is why we talk about the older games so much, and why we've gone back and played them, because of that disconnect and that not enjoying the more recent games as much as we did, even just again 4 or 5 years ago.
Right. Yeah, he actually used the time frame that we talk about too. Right. Yeah. It's no
coincidence. It's no coincidence.
And whatnot, right. So I want to also give a hat tip to the Live King, so at Steve from the Dot on Twitter, who turned me on to this video. So he actually sent that to me and he goes, hey, this would be a great topic for you and Andrew to discuss on the podcast. And so I appreciate you, Live King. And also thank you for being a continued contributor to the NLSC Top 10 Plays of the Week and, interacting with our content. So we appreciate you.
Ditto. But speaking of feeling a bit disillusioned with basketball gaming, or 2K at least in recent years, that was the subject of this week's mailbag prompt. So it is time to open up the mailbag.
To the mailman, the pump fake. What an unbelievable dunk!
And so, Derek, what was that question that you posed to our listeners this week?
The mailbag prompt I put out was, basketball gamers, have you been playing the most recent NBA 2K and or NBA Live games less over the last 5 years? If so, why? And I think that goes right along with the Agent 00 video. And I want to make sure to include NBA Live in there as well, because their recent releases, NBA Live 19, NBA Live 18, have you been burnt out on those? Are there issues as far as, staying interested in those games, etc.?
And obviously, I can relate to that again, because I've been playing 2K14, as I've talked about many times on the show in the past few months. That I've been playing that instead of 2K21, then 2K22 when it came out. I gave 2K22 a go, just wasn't feeling it, and went straight back to my career, and I've been having a blast with that. And clearly, from the responses we got, we're not alone in that regard.
I've played NBA 2K17 20 times more by itself than I have 2K18 through 2K22. So that speaks volumes, right?
Yeah.
If I've played, that means I haven't spent That means I haven't even spent close to as much time with all 5 of those newer titles than that one title. So that's a red flag.
So first up, we have Big Perk at SweetJones_OTF. Shout out to you as always. Honestly, I've been on 2Ks, but I did download NBA Live 19. I'm going to start a season and give it a full session and try to embrace it. Play something different. And yes, this is, as we've said so many times before, not having the choice in the space, not having the competition. People are really getting that 2K fatigue and want something different, so they're going back and giving Live 19 another look, or like us, going back even further and checking out old favourites, or seeing if we can find some new old favourites, as the case may be. So people are going back and looking at these games. We talked about it last week's show as well, when we were talking about retro gaming, and I put out the Monday tip-off this past week as well, that retro gaming is filling a gap, expanding on my thoughts on that matter. And yeah, I think it's absolutely the case.
No, I appreciate that he said that. And I would say the same thing if he said, you know what, I've been playing NBA Live 19 and I need to try something different. I'm going to purchase NBA 2K22. Like, it's good to have options. It's good to try something new, try something fresh, and whatnot. And I think that that's a good move for anybody. For you and I, we have, 30 plus years of basketball games that we can go back to and enjoy either, together or solo or whatnot, or with our families or friends and everything. And it's great to have that collection, but not everybody has that type of collection.
And I do see some people going back to Live 19 that have been playing 2K, getting a bit sick of it and saying, oh, was Live 19 any good? And some people saying, oh, well, it was a bit rough and not quite as good as 2K in these areas, but it is fun. And there is definitely a dedicated community that is still playing Live 19. We are getting Live 19 highlights in the top 10, of course. The interest is definitely there.
Yeah, we've had a lot of great highlights from Live 19 that hit the top 10 from guys like, the Live King, Rel House, and, and others. And we've also had some NBA Live 18 highlights in there from time to time. So it is nice to see that people are still enjoying the most recent lives. But it is kind of sad that they stopped at NBA Live 19 because, they had a gameplay base that they could work with and they decided to not move forward. And now we haven't gotten a game and, we're heading into 2023.
Should have listened to the feedback of the old guard. Just going to put that out there again. Next up, we have Escuela de Gamer on Twitter. Shout out to you. Sad to say yes, because every year 2K has been the only basketball simulator and just got too comfortable, not adding nothing new to gameplay, focusing on microtransactions, my player and my team over those. I'm old school, maybe it's that. And I am seeing, I feel that as well, that I sometimes think, oh, is it just me getting grumpy old millennial as I've become? But younger gamers as well, who started out with 2K11, 2K12, 13, 14, they're seeing the differences as well. They're starting to feel that 2K fatigue. So it's not just quote-unquote old heads that are having these complaints, these criticisms about the games. It's younger gamers as well, and the fatigue is real, the frustration is real, and yeah. So no, I don't feel that you're just an old head whining. You have a very legitimate criticism there.
Yeah, it feels like they're not innovating and not bringing in positive changes to the gameplay, right? The on-court action, the most important part, how it feels on the sticks and everything. It feels like each game is just kind of like running into each other from a graphical perspective and a gameplay perspective. And that can wear you down. That can cause fatigue. That can cause you not to want to put on these games or even go back and play them. Guess how many times I've gone back and played the console version of NBA 2K21? 0. Like I haven't gone back and played it once since 2K22 came out. And then when 2K22 is done its cycle, I'm not going to go back and play that either because there's no reason for me to return to it. There's nothing groundbreaking about the gameplay. There's nothing super exciting about it in order for me to do that, which is different from some of these classic titles we play, right? Like there's interesting aspects and fun aspects and unique aspects to even games like NBA in the Zone, NBA Live 96, etc. But it just feels like the newer 2Ks, they're not innovating the same.
I mean, I've seen you go back, and I have too, to 2K14, 2K16, 2K17, 2K15. So you are going back to these older games. It's not the case of, we're old heads that don't like anything past the 90s, or anything past the mid-2000s, or anything that was part of our childhood and young adulthood. It's still fairly recent, these games that we go back to and really have a great appreciation for. It's really just those last 4 or 5 years that we've felt that goodwill just eroding, and that lack of innovation and that fatigue really setting in.
Right. And the only reason why I go back and play 2K19 as much as I have, the mods, because of the PC, the outstanding retro roster mods, and playing with Stildo and whatnot, and working on that project. If we were talking about vanilla NBA 2K19, if we were talking about just the console version, I would not be going back and playing that. And that's a fact. So that's when I know I really like a game, overall, in the games, the overall gameplay presentation and whatnot, is I could play the game completely unmodded and just go back to it and just have a blast. Games like NBA 2K13, NBA 2K11, NBA 2K14, Xbox One, I can go back and play those games with no mods at all and just be like, that was a really fun game. This was a fun time, and not have my frustration overwhelm me.
And finally, we have Per DXDO from the NLSC Discord. Check out the video that Derek uploaded playing Per DXDO in NBA 2K14 on Xbox One over Parsec. Great highlights there. 2K14, obviously a game I'm very much enamored with these days, but says, definitely less. The last 2K I bought was 2K20, and probably won't be buying another 2K game soon. I personally feel like the standard of quality has fallen since 2K16, and some of the older 2Ks have just as good or better gameplay than the newer releases. And again, not an uncommon opinion these days.
Well, I know that Per DXDO loves playing some of the classics because he routinely wants to connect. And when I say classics, I mean, and we just had that conversation last podcast, right? What's retro and what's classic? I'm actually going to call 2K14 and whatnot classics because I don't have another word for it right now. Because you can't call it current. But he likes to go back and play NBA 2K12, NBA 2K14. It seems like it's the early 2010s that really resonate with him for basketball, NBA basketball video games and whatnot. I think that he's also very good at the games. I just want to point that out. I don't know if he's listening or not, but he's always great competition on the 5-on-5 sim games, and he's always really fun to play with on the arcade games. Him and I have connected on NBA Showtime. We've connected on NBA Jam on Fire Edition, and it's always fun to connect with him and play. And I'll be connecting with him probably a lot more this year on various games. And you're right, that NBA 2K14 game we had where I was using the Josh Smith, Andre Drummond, Chauncey Billups Pistons, and he was using the KG, Pierce, Joe Johnson, Darren Williams Nets. That was a blast, and it was tight all game. I ended up pulling it out at the end, but a lot of great highlights in that video is up on the NLSC YouTube.
And I think it just further proves our point that the 2K fatigue is a real thing. It's being felt throughout the community. You can see it on the in our forum, on Operation Sports, on the official 2K subreddit. Even if people aren't calling it that specifically, that's what the phenomenon is.
It's hard to care is what the common theme seems to be, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to care about the most recent 2K, or it's hard to care about what they're doing with the games because you feel like it's the same every year, and that oftentimes it's not in the best interest of the gamer. And I think, like I stated again, the lack of innovation does hurt, and I think you would agree. The lack of different, fun, interesting gameplay aspects, or, major tweaks to the gameplay, a lack of innovation when it comes to graphics, like changing the looks of the games or the body types, all of that stuff. It just feels like the releases are just kind of running in together, and you feel like each release you're going to still have to dodge like a minefield of gameplay issues, or you'll just be super underwhelmed with the gameplay in many different areas and whatnot. And I think that's where the 2K fatigue really sets in. I think that if the game felt a little bit more fresh and they were doing different things, with each new release, that and I know it's only a 1-year development cycle, and I know that's not easy, but if they were doing things to keep things fresh like they did from 2K15 to 2K16 to 2K17 and whatnot, I think that people wouldn't have the same 2K fatigue. Also, having no competition in the space hurts as well. People can't jump onto another basketball game or a new basketball game and have a fresh experience and then go back to 2K. They just feel like they're stuck with 2K.
And we're definitely feeling the effects of having that lack of choice in the space, as we've said before. And again, the erosion of that goodwill and trust and that feeling that we've been lied to in developer blogs and that we've had promises broken, that we hear something cool about the upcoming game, but it just feels like marketing hype. Like it just feels like spin, that we can't get excited about it. It's a shame because we do want to get excited about these games. And yes, we will be reading whatever news comes out this week and over the coming weeks, and we will be approaching it with an open mind, but at the same time you do need that critical eye, and you do need to keep in mind the broken promises of the past and, they've said this before and it's not panned out that way, or it's not been as good as advertised. You do need to keep that in the back of your mind and not just accept everything blindly.
And I hope that people speak up. I hope people do what Agent 00 did, and, they let their voice be heard. They're honest about how they feel about 2K and the direction and their own fatigue with the product and everything, because I want 2K to be great, right? Like, I want to be excited about their new releases. Remember, my brothers and I, we were midnight release people. We were the ones super excited to go into the store, pick up the game, put it on, and just like have a blast and just get lost in it. And we just don't have that feeling anymore. And how much I still love basketball video games.
Definitely.
I mean, Andrew will tell you how many times I hit him up to play. And, I play with people on the Discord over Parsec and whatnot. I am playing every night with my brothers. And whatnot. Like, I love basketball video games. That has not changed. I haven't lost my love for it at all. So it's definitely not that. It's just I'm disappointed with, the lack of options and the direction they've gone in.
And I'm the same. I would not be creating content, running a site over 20 years later if I wasn't passionate about the genre and playing games. It's not like it's making me millions of dollars to run the NLSC. It's something I do. It's a passion project. It's a creative outlet. It's something I do because I love basketball gaming, as hopefully all my content comes across, that is the underlying theme, is that I do love basketball gaming. That when I do have criticisms, it's because I want them to be as great as they can be, and I know that they can be, having had so much fun with them over the years and seeing the changes in direction and whatnot. So it's the criticism is always from a constructive place, just as the praise is not blind praise either. It is a genuine enthusiasm for the games.
Exactly.
But thank you for those responses to the mailbag. And it's if you feel that you're being overly critical, don't, because clearly a lot of people feel that way. It's not just you. It's not just you being a bitter old head. It's you noticing a trend in basketball gaming.
Right. I also want to do a special shout out to those new participants in the NLSC Top 10 Plays of the Week. We have people like Lookie the Gamer that are into it now. Demand Respect has been more active, sending me highlights recently. At Rel House has been in it for the last few weeks. It has been really cool to get a bunch of new people from the basketball gaming community into the NLSC Top 10 Plays of the Week. They're submitting great highlights. I feel like the top 10 has been really, really fun the last few weeks and whatnot. And I love to see them, and I hope that even more people get involved.
Keep those highlights coming, because I love to see what Derek puts together every week. He works extremely hard on that top 10 to make it as great as it can be every week. He takes special care in his rankings and his placings. And again, there's no ill will from the community. There's some friendly competition there as far as, I'm going to get the number one spot. I'm gunning for that. But there's no complaints. There's no grumbling about it. Everyone just enjoying the top 10 that you do, Derek. And I love to see it. Please keep those highlights coming.
Oh, and connect with me on Parsec more as well. I'll try to make myself available because, I'd love to put up more videos on the NLSC YouTube channel, including like greatest performances and whatnot, like I did for the Delonte West NBA Live 10 performance. I think that there's a lot more we can do with the NLSC YouTube content, and a large portion of that is, with help from the community, connecting and playing games.
With that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's episode of the NLSC Podcast. We thank you for tuning in. Once again, the show comes out every week on the NLSC, our YouTube channel, and all the podcatching apps and platforms. And again, if you'd like to leave us a review, hopefully a positive one, that would be very much appreciated. And as always, we'd like to put out one last reminder to connect with us on social media. We love your interactions. So Derek, what are your handles?
You can find me on Twitter at D4384 and at D43G. You can also find me on YouTube, D43, on the NLSC, D43, and on IG occasionally, D4384.
I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. Our Instagram is NLSC Basketball. Our aforementioned YouTube channel is youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nba-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that's all for this week. So thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.